Good day, everyone. My name is David Williams, Executive Director of the United States Association for Energy Economics. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Advances in Nuclear Power, Increased Resiliency in the Face of COVID-19 and Other Potential Challenges. We are grateful to our moderator, Dr. Knox from Momentum, and our distinguished panelists for today's timely discussion. First, a little bit about the United States Association for Energy Economics. We are the largest affiliate of the International Association for Energy Economics and provide a forum for the exchange of ideas, experience, and issues among professionals interested in the field. The organization produces 2 professional journals, a newsletter, and holds conferences and virtual presentations, along with a host of other products and services you can find on our website at www.usae.org. If you're not already a member of the association, we welcome you to join. A few housekeeping matters in regard to today's webinar before I hand things over to our moderator. First, this webinar is being recorded for those that cannot participate in today's live event. If you have questions for our panelists, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window and type your question. We've allocated sufficient time at the end of this webinar to address your questions. And now, I would like to introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Knox, Vice President, Strategic Development of Nuclear and Environment, Momentum. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Dave, for the introduction and for teeing up the panel. I'm excited to be a part of this panel today, and we have 4 experts in the nuclear energy field representing different aspects. And so I'm going to be short on the introductions and then just turn it over to them. And I'm going to introduce the speakers first in the order that they're going to speak. And but before I do that, I would like to thank right up front, Dave, I appreciate your help in getting this panel together. Also, Chris Nichols, Kim Kaufman, and certainly Rebecca Lilly for getting everything together. I want to try to remember to thank you at the end, but I certainly didn't want to go without thanking the people that made this panel possible. And so our first speaker this morning will be Kelly Lefler from the Office of Nuclear Energy, and their bios are online, so I'm going to give a short and abbreviated version of the bios. But Kelly's a senior advisor in the Office of Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy, and she served on a broad range of capacities dealing with energy policy, global nuclear markets, natural gas, electricity, and she's contributed to major cross-cutting efforts at the department, working on things like the staff report on electricity markets and reliability and the second installment of the quadrennial energy review. And Kelly will be our first speaker. Our second speaker will be Jose Reyes. He's the co-founder of NuScale Power and the co-designer of the NuScale passively cooled small modular reactor. He's received awards from all over the world, including just a few. He received several national awards, including the 2013 Nuclear Energy Advocate Award, the 2014 American Nuclear Society Thermal Hydraulic Division Technical Achievement Award, and the 2017 Nuclear Infrastructure Council Trailblazer Award. And then we have Jeremy Harrell, who's the Managing Director of Policy at ClearPath, which is a research and advocacy organization based on free market ideas that promote innovation and accelerate clean energy deployment. Jeremy also serves as the chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Industry Council, which is a trade association in Washington, D.C. that represents more than 60 nuclear energy supplier companies. And finally, we have Michelle Connor, who's an expert with the Tennessee Valley Authority. She's the small modular reactor senior manager of operations and training. She's worked on several licensing and regulatory affairs projects over the years and has a lot of background in organizational effectiveness and project management. So that's our panel of experts this morning. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Kelly to go first, and then she'll be followed by Jose. And then we'd like to save time at the end for discussions and questions. But as each speaker finishes up their presentations, if there are questions for clarification on that particular speaker, we'll try to address those at the end before moving to the next. But we would like to save most of the questions for the end for a panel discussion. Thank you. Kelly?
So thank you, Eric, and thank you, USAE, for putting on this webinar. Thank you for having me. As was mentioned, I'm part of the Office of Nuclear Energy. Our mission, we are an applied R&D organization, is to enable innovation, to support unique research infrastructure, and solve cross-cutting challenges within the nuclear energy sector, to advance nuclear energy science and technology, to empower the nation to meet its energy, environmental, and national security goals. So we have our mission kind of divided into these 4 pillars, and as I talk today, I give kind of an overview of nuclear energy in the United States and some of the directions it's headed. I'll highlight some of the programs we have to enable these advancements. So first, where is nuclear energy today in the United States? We have 95 reactors at 57 plants in 29 states. Nuclear power plants produce about 20% of the United States electricity, despite only being about 10 to 11% of the installed capacity. And the reason for that is because these plants operate at unparalleled capacity factors. In 2019, the record-setting year, the U.S. nuclear fleet operated with a capacity factor of 93%. And these are also our largest source of emissions-free power. In the United States, nuclear represents over half of the emissions-free generation that we have. Globally speaking, it's about 30% of emissions-free generation. And part of that is because these are among our most resilient facilities. They operate at full capacity for about 18 to 24 months before refueling. And I guess to tie into sort of one of the concerns of the current situation, the way those refuelings are handled is for about 30 days, these plants will come offline. They'll change out about a third of the core, perform any maintenance, and this requires bringing in 1,500 to 2,000 skilled laborers to complete all this work. So there was a lot of concern that with bringing in so many people, that you might have a situation that could be unsafe. But what we've seen is that the owner-operators of these facilities have taken aggressive measures to ensure the safety of the workers they're bringing in. They have worked with tremendous efficiency, and they've reduced the downtime, so there are no concerns about potential unserved load. So we've really seen tremendous performance in the face of any concerns that might arise from this situation. Speaking to some of the changes that are happening in the current fleet, a lot of folks are aware that we have had, in the last 7 years, 10 reactors shut down prematurely before the end of their existing licenses. And we do have 5 more reactors that have announced intent to close early. States have done some really incredible things to prevent some of those shutdowns from happening. We've seen measures in a number of states, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, Ohio, that have prevented the shutdown of 11 reactors. But the other side of that coin is, okay, some of these facilities are facing some economic hardship, but many of these reactors are looking to operate for many more years to come. We've had 4 reactors receive a subsequent license renewal to operate to 80 years. We've had another plant with 2 reactors apply for that subsequent license renewal, and we've had several owner-operators announce that they will apply for that license renewal when it becomes an option. And to highlight some of the programs that the Office of Nuclear Energy has had in this area, we have the Light Water Reactor Sustainability Program, which has worked to demonstrate the technical capability of these plants to continue operating, and continues to work on some of the economic challenges that the plants are facing, working to reduce the cost of operation, in partnership with those owner operators. So that's where things are today. So when we talk about the future, what are we looking at? And I want to highlight two types of innovation that will be really transformative in terms of how nuclear power plants interact with the energy sector. So across the top here, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So across the top, you see sort of the current mode of operation. We have these large gigawatt scale reactors, and they produce heat, which is in turn used to produce electricity. And they generally do that in what we call base load mode. That is, they're running sort of at full capacity all the time. That said, they do have ability to maneuver and operate flexibly. But when we look to the future, what are some of those key types of innovation that will be really transformative? So if you look on the left side of the screen, so looking at the types of reactors. So first, we have the large light water reactors, LWRs. Those are the current reactors. We're looking at innovation in two ways on the reactors. So one is the size. So looking at what are called small modular reactors, SMRs, or micro reactors. So SMRs being less than 300 megawatts, micro reactors being less than 20 megawatts. So this really lets you fit into the market in different ways. The other exciting advancement is looking at different materials. So not necessarily a water-based system, but something that uses other materials for cooling, for moderating neutrons. A little too technical maybe, but and this will aid in some of the other innovations that we're talking about. So the second, well, and to highlight some of the programs we have on that side of things, we have an open industry funding opportunity announcement. So to work in public-private partnerships to support some of the innovations that companies are working toward. We're also supporting the necessary testing infrastructure to enable the approximately 50 companies that are working in this space to advance their designs. We have the transient reactor test facility, and we're working to build the versatile test reactor. So what these reactor innovations will also enable, sort of the second type of innovation. If you look sort of in the middle, we have a little E- to represent electrons, and then we have heat. So rather than just using that sort of traditional thermal generator mode of operation where you produce electrons and sell those into the grid, looking at what else can be done with either the electricity that's produced or direct use of the heat. You could do things like power hydrogen production. We currently have a demonstration program underway looking at coupling an existing nuclear power plant with hydrolyzers to produce hydrogen. In the case of Davis-Besse, we're looking to use that hydrogen to power a bus fleet, to really thinking about decarbonizing other sectors within the economy. But you could also use that heat or electricity to power chemical processes, produce clean water, other industrial processes. So really thinking about how these facilities could enable a cleaner energy system writ large, rather than just reducing emissions within the electricity sector. So this really increases the flexibility of these plants, and again, sort of looking at the full integration of these facilities in terms of how we use energy. So practically speaking, what does that mean? What does that look like? And I think these are some of my my favorite images that we've produced with. So these are images courtesy of Third Way, but in terms of reimagining what can nuclear power do for our economy, thinking about how this would look deployed in, say, a remote Arctic scenario, in an industrial hub, in a transit situation, things where you integrate your nuclear reactor with an industrial process. You power the facility but you also use the heat to power the actual processes you're running. Integrating, in the case of the Arctic scenario, integrating with renewable power systems, with your water purification, with municipal heat, really having that fully decarbonized use of energy within the community. And because of some of the advancements that we're seeing with these reactors, or the potential, you really are able to transform how we could incorporate them. So happy to take any questions at the end. I think one of the things I wanted to highlight, we right now are enjoying broad bipartisan support for our mission, both in Congress and within the administration. I think Jeremy's going to speak to some of the successes in that sphere in his remarks, and we'll hear from Jose and about specifics of some of the reactors that are under development. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Our next speaker is Jose Reyes from NuScale. Jose. Jose, you're on mute, so you may want to take yourself off mute.
There we go. Thanks so much for inviting me to partake in this. This is really an exciting seminar, and I'm glad to be part of it. It's interesting to see where we are now in terms of the this pandemic. Can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have power? And so having reliable power through whatever the situation is huge, and really keeps the communications open, keeps us basically able to continue with our work, to work remotely. So it's really essential to reliability to be able to continue to function in as close to normal a manner as possible. So back in 2007, I co-founded a company, NuScale Power, and our mission is to provide scalable, advanced nuclear technology for the production of electricity, heat, and clean water. And this is the big one, to improve the quality of life for people around the world. So we really adhere to that. We believe in that mission. And because of that, we've done multiple studies along the line of what Kelly had mentioned regarding the use of nuclear power for hydrogen production and a whole range of applications. So this project started with a grant from the Department of Energy way back when I was the head of the nuclear engineering department at Oregon State University. We had a project to develop a small reactor. Spent a year in Vienna with the IAEA after we had completed some of that work for DOE, and recognized that there was a real need for small power. That was kind of the aha moment there when I was talking to different delegates from member states of the IAEA, recognizing that they had smaller grids and needed smaller power. So in 2007, we founded NuScale Power with the goal of commercializing a small nuclear power reactor. We were very fortunate that Fluor became our strategic investor in 2011. And then in 2013, we competed for and successfully won basically it was a $252 million matching grant program. So for every dollar the investors put in, DOE was matching that. So that was huge for us. I started the company with 3 base patents, and there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening. We have a lot of young folks, 40% of our companies under the age of 40, and we've grown from 3 patents to 500, I think we're at 529 patents now, either granted or pending in 20 countries. Very exciting. We have about 380 employees in 6 offices, and we also opened up an office in London. If you start counting contractors, we're probably close to about 500 employees working on the project today. We have submitted our design certification application to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And we are on track to get that the final safety evaluation report from NRC in just a few months. So we've been working really hard around the clock to get that done. So September of this year, we're hoping to get our final safety evaluation report completed from the NRC. Total investment in NuScale to date is over $900 million. So about a third of that is from DOE, and the balance of that is from our investors. So we have our first customer, which is the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, and that's the first plant will build in Idaho Falls. So it was a big job trying to get that design certification application submitted. It was the first in the U.S. for SMRs. We submitted in December of 2016. A 40-month process. The NRC has been absolutely excellent in terms of adhering to the schedule. We've been supplying the information they need on a timely basis. That application by itself was about 22,000 pages. That's just the application. We have submitted a whole host of topical reports to go with that. And as I said, we are on schedule for a final safety evaluation report in just a few months. So let's talk a little bit about the technology. This is our basic technology. What it is a small reactor vessel. It's a light water reactor, natural circulation, so there's no reactor coolant pumps, that's housed inside of a small containment vessel. So instead of the large concrete containment domes that you're accustomed to seeing, we've gone to a small prefabricated containment vessel. And that's huge because that greatly reduces the construction time if you think about it. While we're doing the manufacturing in a high quality QA controlled factory, in parallel, we're doing all the civil construction on site. So that reduces construction time from 5 years to about 3 years. Our design that we're getting licensed is a 12-pack, and I'll describe that in just a moment. But each module produces 60 megawatts electric, that's the gross power, and is all self-contained. Everything you need for safety is in the pool with that module. So now I'm going to try to show you a short video. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. No, it's not working. Well, I don't know if that's working or not.
Jose, it's not. You need to switch to the video share.
Okay. So new share. Nope, it looks like it's not working. I'm just gonna describe the process from this slide rather than try to show the video. The way the process works is that we have a small reactor core located at the bottom of the screen here in red. So that's 37 fuel assemblies. Each assembly is a 17 by 17 standard commercially available fuel. That fission reaction occurs when you remove the control rods. The hot water then is created in the core region. That hot water rises through the central riser pipe. It comes around the top and makes a turn here under the baffle plate. And on the outside of that riser pipe are two helical coil steam generators. And those steam generators basically remove the heat from the coolant. So what you have is hot water being generated in the core, cold water being generated at an elevated position, the density difference, elevation difference, and so that results in a natural circulation flow. So there's no reactor coolant pumps. And all of that is housed inside the containment vessel. So it's relatively straightforward, very simple. We've eliminated all reactor coolant pumps, so it's a much simpler design. And I'll describe the safety of this design here in just a minute. But it is a different approach to deploying nuclear power. We build the module, which is the reactor vessel and the containment in a factory. That gets shipped in 3 or 4 pieces, depending on the location. It can be shipped by rail, truck, or barge. And then that's installed. So basically, the civil construction would be completed. We build a large pool, which is shown in the center. And the modules would be placed in the pool during normal operation. So the modules normally sit underwater, or at least immersed in water, during normal operation. And that's really the entire system. It's a reactor inside of an insulated vacuum containment vessel, which sits underwater below ground. So it's a fairly simple concept. And again, everything you need for safety is right there. We have done a significant amount of testing, hardware testing. We've spent about $100 million in hardware testing to date. The steam generators were built in full scale at a facility in Italy. Control rod drives tested in Germany and in Richland. We've tested all of our fuel bundles, our spacer grids, so a significant amount of testing. And of course, we built the first 12 module control room, where we can demonstrate that we can safely control 12 modules from a single control room. It's highly automated, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But the resilience of the plant, it really is key to us, and has always been so from the very beginning in terms of design. So we've added these features here. We've got black start capability, island mode, which means that any one module can power and support the operation of the other 11 modules. So this is for our first plant in Idaho. 100% steam bypass. So at full power, you can direct all the steam to a condenser, which gives us a very unique capability in terms of hot operational standby conditions. Robust INC system. There's no reactor cool pumps to fail. Very simple feed water system. There's no separators or dryers or reheaters. Very simple turbine generator design. So it's skid mounted. The 60 megawatt electric turbine generator sets are available in the fossil fuel industry. So those are available today. And we've got a very robust electrical distribution system, which we've examined from the standpoint of EMP, electromagnetic pulse. But foundational to all of resilience is our safety. So we have a very unique passive safety system. And the reason that this works so easily and so well is because it's so small. The core energy is about 200 megawatts thermal, a little bit over 60 megawatts electric being generated. But once you isolate the modules, when you shut the main steam isolation valves and the feed water valves, you basically have isolated that module from the world. You essentially have a tank that sits in a pool of water. And it works because as soon as the control rods drop, they drop by gravity. And they're normally held open or held up by electromagnetic jacks. So you lose power, you lose the grippers, and the control rods just fall into the core. So the reaction stops, but you generate decay heat. But in about 1 to 2 seconds, you're 10, 11 megawatts. In about a day, you're down to 1 megawatt. And so just for scale, 10 megawatt would be about the size of the University of Missouri research reactor. 1 megawatt is like the Oregon State University research reactor, so relatively low power, natural circulation cooled. Here we're rejecting heat either through heat exchangers located on the outside shell of the containment, or using the containment shell itself. So if we're venting steam into the containment, that steam's condensing inside the containment, rejecting heat to the pool, and returning to the reactor. If we didn't do anything, if we didn't add water to the pool or provide cooling to the pool, in 3 days you'd see some bulk boiling. You see the water level in the pool drop, but all the heat is being removed. So you've gone from a liquid cooling to a boiling cooling system. And if you still didn't do anything, even after 30 days, just air cooling by itself, just the motion of air, free convection on the outside shell of the containment, is enough to remove all the decay heat. Now, what's unique about this is we've done this without any operator action, without any AC or DC power, and it remains cool and safe for an unlimited period of time without the need to add water. So this is a really this is very unique in terms of what we can do. No operator or computer action, no AC or DC power, and no need to add water. So if you think about the events at Fukushima, where they were limited because they didn't have access to outside power, they weren't able to add water. This really overcomes all those issues. So this is basis of our system in terms of resiliency. Because we can operate safely without the need for power, without AC or DC power, there's a lot of things that we can do that typical nuclear power plants haven't been able to do in the past. So we do have a black start capability, which allows us to start any one module using a very small power supply like a diesel or a natural gas turbine. Relatively small, less than a megawatt. So we can start up one module. That module then can pick up all the house loads for the rest of the plant. So we can black start this plant even if you lose all the power, all your connections to the grid. We'll be the first to offer what we call first responder power. Because we don't require AC or DC power for safety, that means we can actually operate off grid. And the reason for that, of course, is that we can go to 100% steam bypass. So you're at 100% power, you've had a severe weather event and it knocks you off the grid. So now we've gone to island mode, 100% power. Instead of directing the steam to the turbines, we direct it to the condensers, and we remain in hot operational conditions, ready to restore power when power is needed. So as portions of the grid are restored, we can start dispatching power in 60 megawatt increments. So we could become first responder power, contrary to what has to happen today with nuclear, which is when you have when you're disconnected from the grid, you have to shut down and go to your backup power supplies. As with other nuclear power plants, we have a great resilience to natural events. We have because we're below grade, we have a significant seismic capability, so exceeds the capabilities at Fukushima. We can withstand 290 mile per hour winds and tornadoes. So it's a very robust shield building, which resides on top of the pool. It's a post 9/11 design, so we had to design it to be resilient to aircraft impact. And in terms of cybersecurity, we went to field programmable gate array technology, which means that these are hardwired logic. So our module protection system and our plant protection system are hardwired. They can't be altered. Even if we were connected to the internet, you couldn't alter the logic for our plant protection and module protection system. And lastly, we completed a fairly intensive study with our on EMP, electromagnetic pulse, and geomagnetic disturbances. So we looked at 3 different levels of resiliency. One is just being able to shut down without doing anything, basically. So we can shut down the reactor safely, even with an EMP event. The second level, we've identified components in the plant that would need to be replaced within 24 hours. So those would be protected in location on site. So you can replace those components within 24 hours to restore the plant to provide power. And lastly, the third level, which we're looking at currently, is what would you need to do to ride through an EMP event. So those are the 3 levels that we've looked at. We certainly can reach the first 2 levels, and we're looking at the 3rd level currently. So the EMP system really is, or EMP is really dependent on the customer and what they would like to see in terms of hardness. In terms of our control rods, of course, if you during normal operation we use power to raise and lower control rods. In the event of shutdown, we just de-energize the control rods, and they fall by gravity into the core. So in terms of mission critical facilities, this is an area which we've been studying extensively. We've published some papers in this area. We did a study on our 12 module plant. And the idea there is because we have no requirement to be connected to the grid for safety, if we have an event which knocks us off the grid, we go into island mode, And anything connected to our plant, a dedicated microgrid, for example, would then be part of our island mode system. So what we found was that most mission critical facilities, hospitals, data centers, banking centers, military bases, they don't require 720 megawatts. They only require maybe 60 megawatts or 120 megawatts. So what we've shown is that with a 12 module plant, you only need 1 or 2 modules to be functional in order to provide power. So it's kind of like a redundant array of independent reactors. And so each module has its own independent turbine generator set. And so we found that we can provide 120 megawatts electric to a mission critical facility with 99.95% availability. At 60 megawatts, it jumps to 99.98% availability. And then recently completed a study, which we're publishing now with TVA, demonstrating that we can get over 6 nines availability, power levels between 50 and 100 megawatts electric, when you include all the power sources supporting a mission critical subgrid. And so that was a very important finding. And it just shows that these systems, because they don't require off-site power, could be a great backup for mission critical facilities. We've had great success working with the regulator in terms of moving these forward. So the idea that we could become first responder power really is being built into regulation as we speak. The first, of course, is that we've got our digital INC platform has already been approved. So this 12 module control room is a key to being able to control the plant. It's a very smart control room, highly automated. We can control 12 reactors from one control room, and our base crew is 6 operators. So we're looking at 6 operators controlling the 12 reactors, and we know that we can operate safely with as little as 3 operators in that control room. The key to this is that there are no operator actions required for any design basis event, and so that's huge. Basically, the system takes care of itself. Again, I mentioned we use this field programmable gate arrays, which allow us then to provide a very hardened system relative to cyber attacks. We also had our no 1E power. We're the first nuclear plant that would be commercially operational with no 1E power required for our safety systems, which would enable us with our application to go to off-grid mission power operations for mission critical facilities. So we've incorporated a new level of plant resiliency, island mode, black start capability, first responder power, significant resilience to natural events, aircraft impact, cybersecurity. We've looked at providing long-term power for mission critical facilities and both high altitude electro EMPs as well as geomagnetic disturbances. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Thanks so much for your time. Just looking forward to some of your questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, Jose, thank you. We've got 2 quick questions. If you can spend maybe 20, 30 seconds answering each. One is from Lenny Wolf that says, could you describe further how the electrical distribution off the SMR is EMP resilient?
Great, yeah. So with regard to that question, we've published a paper on that, and we would be glad to provide that. It's fairly in-depth, and so it requires a bit of time to describe it, but certainly that's publicly available. And if you go to our website, you can find our paper on EMP.
Perfect.
The second question I see is, what's the most expensive components, and how do you envision cost reductions over time? With that, we know already, having looked at what's done at Electric Boat, for example, in building nuclear submarines, this in-house manufacturing is really valuable. We expect that by the 7th or 8th module that we build, even for the first plant, we really reduce the cost of those modules, maybe up to 20%. So we know that that's one way of reducing the cost of our modules over time.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Jose. And I'm just going to turn it over to Jeremy. Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for tuning to address you all. I'm going to pop this deck here real quick. Yeah, so I'm going to try to go relatively quickly here because I want to make sure Michelle has plenty of time and then there's time for questions. But just as a quick aside, in addition to my role as Managing Director of Policy at ClearPath, I also serve as the Chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Industry Council. U.S. NIC is the leading U.S. business advocate for increased nuclear energy and global deployment of U.S. advanced nuclear technologies. Represent over 80 companies kind of engaged in the nuclear innovation supply chain development space. So certainly check us out. And I'll touch just a little bit on ClearPath just so I can give you a little bit of kind of perspective of where we're coming from and what kind of guides some of my perspectives here. So we're kind of a unique nonprofit in town that is focused on addressing climate change and expanding clean energy technology options. Our mission is to advance conservative policies that accelerate clean energy innovation, and ultimately we've got kind of a multi-tool toolbox. We serve as a traditional think tank, and as well have a C4 advocacy arm that advocates in DC on federal public policy to help benefit zero emission technologies. Just in general, our vision for the world and vision of American leadership in the climate clean energy space is as a technology provider. We think that the U.S. Department of Energy and the American Energy Innovation Engine is the first-class world leading engine that's catalyzing new technologies like the technologies that Jose was talking about earlier, and ultimately is going to play a significant role in tackling global carbon emission reductions. And so, we don't just work on nuclear. So I do want to preface that. We think that a broad suite of zero emission technologies are needed to get to net zero CO2 emissions. And so we think that it's important to drive down the cost of clean energy assets. However, important to low-cost, load-following energy technologies to the commercial marketplace. I think something we'll saw, and I'll touch a little bit later on Duke's most recent announcement as Duke Energy looks to drive and reduce the carbon emissions of their power sector portfolio. The need for ZELFers is what they're calling them. So zero-emission, load-following energy resources, and that's one of the major reasons why ClearPath spends so much time on nuclear, and why we think it's such an important part not only of the domestic electric grid, but a huge part of the broader global energy picture. Just briefly, I want to kind of point to and kind of underscore that point, the role that nuclear can play in an energy transition. I think there's the data is pretty clear out there that without a technology like nuclear, or in particular nuclear, and this involves keeping existing nuclear facilities in the US and across the globe generating, as well as adding new nuclear, that the global decarbonization picture is significantly more expensive. MIT has done a really fascinating report on the constraints and the expense of an energy transition without nuclear power. IEA has done multiple different scenarios that show that decarbonization can be over double more expensive to electricity consumer, and it's got a ClearPath belief that we can't have this decision of whether we go to more expensive clean or more traditional energy resources. We need to drive down the cost of low emitting technologies and make it so that it's the win-win scenario, right? It's good for providing electricity to our constituencies as well as for the environment. And there's been a ton of momentum here in the United States, and I just want to underscore kind of the power sector and energy sector as a whole. We've seen over the last year and a half some significant CO2 emission targets put out by our major electrical utilities and some of the bigger energy users in the country, like Occidental Petroleum, for example, as well. Duke's announcement, I guess it was now 2 weeks ago, kind of one of the most recent, that say that they're driving towards net zero by 2050. And I think all of these are particularly interesting, one, because they're driving towards this deeper decarbonization goal, where very many of them have said that they don't have the technologies that they need to meet both the grid's reliability, low cost, affordable electricity needs, and to reach these zero emission technologies. And so the increased need for technologies like advanced nuclear to meet these objectives that they're laying out. And I think this is an important market signal. And I think, we can kind of show here, 48 public utilities in the United States have made these like at least 80% carbon reduction goals by mid-century. A good almost half of them are at net zero or being carbon-free electricity production. And as you can look at the map, all these utilities combined together represent almost 70% of U.S. electricity customers. So it's a really important market signal being thrown out there to the finance community that these are the technologies that are going to be needed to meet these environmental goals and our country's electricity needs so that we can facilitate economic growth. There's been some huge momentum within the private sector over the last year, and I just wanted to kind of underscore a couple items in addition to Jose, who forecasted hopefully a conclusion of a NRC design certification process here at the end of the year. Oklo, the first non-light water microreactor to begin NRC licensing, put their application forward at the beginning of this year. The Department of Defense just launched a mobile microreactor program. They selected 3 companies, BWXT, X Energy, and Westinghouse, to do a first phase of these mobile microreactors with the goal of demonstrating at least one of these at Idaho National Lab by 2023. We saw a GE move forward and officially begin the NRC licensing of their light water design here at the beginning of the year. The Department of Energy is maybe any hour or every any day, maybe Kelly can shed more light, of launching the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program focused on demonstrating 2 new American reactor designs by the 2025-2027 timeframe. And then we're already seeing some really interesting movement on the regulatory side. NRC is starting to take some proactive action to kind of grease the skids and make sure the regulatory environment is ready for this new wave of technologies like NuScale, like Oklo, like GE, and the designs that ultimately DOE is going to accelerate here with the demonstration program. And more utilities are kind of laying out this narrative of what's the economic reality of decarbonizing their grid, and it's clear that you need a technology like advanced nuclear or a carbon capture sequestration to meet those objectives. I did want to allude a little bit to some of the significant support that's happening here in Washington, D.C. on the advanced nuclear side. There's really been a huge shift as a result of momentum on climate policy, but as well on national security policy. China and Russia are signature competitors to us in these technologies. The globe wants advanced nuclear technologies. There's countless countries who are looking to explore significant build out of advanced nuclear. And if the U.S. doesn't fill that goal as a technology provider, Russia and China certainly are. And so there's really a national security imperative as well to accelerate these technologies. I wanted to touch on just these 3 quick things of significant achievements that happened in the last Congress. We hadn't seen standalone nuclear legislation enacted in the law in almost a decade, really since, and significant policy really since EPACT 05, the energy policy of 05. And in last Congress, we saw 3 major pieces of legislation get enacted in the law that I think are going to be essential to catalyzing kind of this next generation of American nuclear technologies in the U.S. electricity market system. So the Nuclear Energy Innovations and Capabilities Act, which is going to essentially facilitate this hotbed of advanced nuclear technology testing at Idaho National Lab, and really, frankly, across the entire Department of Energy spectrum. It established the Nuclear Reactor Innovation Center, which is going to be kind of this world clearinghouse for new American technologies. Sets a target for demonstrating a sodium fast-cooled reactor, the first test reactor, by the end of 2026, and kind of provides some additional flexibility for these department public-private cost-share programs. There was an expansion of the 45J Advanced Nuclear Production Tax Credit that will ultimately help catalyze the kind of next 6 gigawatts of new American nuclear power over the time, and it was also helpful to the Vogtle reactors that are nearing completion down in Georgia. That represents as much as an $18 per megawatt hour production tax credit for the first 8 years of operation. So something that's really beneficial to American nuclear designs. And then NEMA, the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act, was key and starting to drive the NRC towards modernizing in their regulatory frameworks and really preparing for this new wave of American technologies that are going to be commercialized. One of the things I just kind of wanted to touch on is the momentum that's going on in this Congress as well. And, I mentioned the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program that DOE is in the process of launching right now. The FY20 federal appropriations process injected the first $230 million into that program. It's going to be a cost share program with two advanced reactor vendors. There's been policy on the Hill that kind of aims to drive more towards this goal of bringing new American reactor designs. The demonstration program largely syncs with this bill, the Nuclear Energy Leadership Act, which has advanced to the Senate by Energy Chair Lisa Murkowski and Democrat ranking member Joe Manchin from West Virginia. A bill that passed nearly unanimously through the committee aims to demonstrate new designs, and I want to kind of lay out some key areas that they've identified that are critical in these new designs. And it really syncs with what Kelly was laying out as of the future of advanced nuclear. These designs should be driving towards an LCOE of $60 or less per megawatt hour, have some type of heat or have some type of heat function that could be used for community heating or industrial processes, provide remote or off-grid energy supply, and backup mission-critical supplies. So some of the stuff exactly that Jose was highlighting, right, that the NuScale reactors bring, and we're looking to bring in additional American technologies to commercial offerings, and I think it's going to be important programs moving forward. I'm not going to go through every single one of the resources, but I just more want to lay out that Congress has sent millions and millions of dollars to the Department of Energy to kind of advance new technologies here moving forward, and the bipartisan support on the Hill is really extremely high for climate reasons, for national security reasons, for economic growth reasons. Advanced nuclear promises have some major wins in grid security as well. So I wanted to lay those out. And a lot of people think about advanced nuclear as being kind of pretty far off. The light at the end of the tunnel is a little dim, and nothing could be further from the truth. There's significant technological development happening in the private sector here, and we've got a wide variety of technologies that have things coming to fruition here in the next 3 to 7 years. And so this is just a little bit of a landscape of showing you some of the technologies that are moving forward in that time frame, which I think are going to be essential. And I think what's key here is all of these things are tracking towards the end of 2030, which is when these utilities are saying they're going to need to be able to rapidly deploy these zero emission load following energy resources. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude and turn it back to Eric. You're on mute, Eric.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. We're running a little bit long, but I want to turn it over as quickly as I can to Michelle Connor. Go ahead, Michelle.
All right, thank you. So I will talk about the Tennessee Valley Authority and our role in the small modular reactors and advanced reactors community. So TVA's mission is to serve the people of the Tennessee Valley. We partner with 150 local power companies and serve 9 million people and 700,000 businesses in part of 7 states. And we directly serve 56 large industries and federal installations. So we've been looking at small modular reactors. You've heard quite a bit about those, and actually you're looking on this screen at the NuScale power module, which we have been doing a detailed design review of, and working with them quite closely to see what the overall cost would be, because as I mentioned on the previous slide, we serve a lot of our community, and we want to make sure that we provide low cost electricity. So why is TVA pursuing an SMR? We do see the need for a diverse generating fleet with increased use of reliable, cleaner, and low-cost generation. So we realize that we have a fleet that's made up of quite a bit of coal power, and that as we move forward towards carbon-free power, we want to have the option of having more nuclear in our portfolio. A small modular reactor has the enhancements in nuclear safety and security, and it's more flexible in terms of size, location, and operations. And of course, again, going back to the coal and wanting to get to a carbon-free power portfolio somewhere in the 2030s to start that initiative is important to us. Also, pursuing new nuclear is consistent with the TVA mission and aligned with the U.S. government policy priorities. So we have looked at not just small modular reactors, including the NuScale and GE designs, but we've also been looking at advanced reactors, the non-light water cooled from molten salt, liquid metal, high temperature gas. So as part of the TVA mission, we have been taking really a holistic look at the different technologies that are out there. This time we are technology neutral. However, what we have done is, and successfully so, is for the Clinton River site that is near Knoxville, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, we have submitted and received an early site permit for that site. Now this is the home of the old DOE breeder reactor. So there's some things about this site that are quite attractive, and one of them is that there's easy access to the 500 kV and 161 kV transmission lines. Because of the nuclear fleet that we already have in place at TVA from the Sequoia and Watts Bar sites that are fairly close by, we have an abundant and skilled workforce and a strong community support for nuclear power in general. So because of time, I'm going to pass by some of these slides. But with the early site permit, we submitted that in 2016. However, in December of 2019, we did actually receive that permit for the Clinton River site from the NRC. An early site permit assesses the site's suitability for potential construction and operation of a nuclear plant. So here we have many options. And the way that we submitted this application was that we used what is called a plant parameter envelope. And so what we did was we evaluated 4 technologies, and we submitted the most limiting case to create that envelope. So what we did was we looked at the BWX technologies, Holtec, NuScale Power, Westinghouse technologies, and as long as whatever technology that TVA selects is within that plant parameter envelope, then this site has already been deemed suitable. So we can reflect that in the next application that, for example, might be, let's say for a NuScale design, a combined operating license application where we would just simply point to our early site permit for those things dealing with environmental or site suitability for a nuclear site. So we have the ability to have a nuclear technology there with up to 800 megawatts thermal for a single unit, or a combined nuclear generating capacity not exceeding 2420 megawatts thermal or 880 megawatts electric. So why did we pursue this? In all honesty, at TVA, we don't have a need for power at this time, but again, we do see the need for clean power. That's always going to be important to the Tennessee Valley Authority, and providing that for our customers matters to us. So we saw pursuing the ESP being important. It is an asset that lasts for 10 to 20 years. It reduces the future licensing risk. So you could wait until you submitted a combined operating license application or construction permit to address things dealing with site suitability. We found that this would be more advantageous to us to go ahead and reduce that licensing risk by pursuing the early site permit, such that we could point to it in future applications. The other things that we did with the early site permit was that we went ahead and addressed the emergency planning zones. TVA has made quite a stride in saying we need to right size the emergency planning zone. So while there's still a lot of work to do, what we did was that it's not a one size fits all. You need to look at the technology. You need to look at what those releases are, the PRA involved, different aspects to where you have a emergency planning zone that is appropriate for the technology that is located on your site. And so in this early site permit and in the safety evaluation that we received with that permit, the NRC acknowledged that that is a good way of going about it, that they are aligned with that. And so it opens up a lot of opportunity, not just for TVA, but for the industry as a whole. So this is just some more guidance about how we developed that plant parameter envelope and how we created the box around all the technologies that we had evaluated, such that if we picked any one of those or a different one that has not yet been identified, as long as it fits within that black box that you see there, then we have already had that evaluated and approved by the NRC. So it gives us a certain amount of flexibility for our future business decisions. These are just some more pictures of the Clinch River site, the core borings that we've done, the fact that there is in fact a big hole there that it was from the way back when we had the government looking at the breeder reactor site or technologies. So let's see here. Again, actually, so it's 11 o'clock. I guess I will turn it back over. One of the things that I do want to mention though, so while we look at clean power, we look at being able to have reliable power, we also look at costs. And so that levelized cost of electricity is not just based on capital costs, it's also based on operations and maintenance costs. So we've been partnering with the industry and in a large part with NuScale to develop the most efficient ways to provide the operations phase of the license, such that not only are you driving down capital costs, but you're also driving down our operations and maintenance costs. And one of the things that we have been evaluating is the ability to create an SMR fleet, where we have fleet services that is radically different from anything you see today in the way that operations and maintenance is implemented and deployed. And we believe that this is going to be a game changer for the future nuclear reactors and sites. So I will turn it back over at this time, but thank you for this opportunity to talk with you guys.
Thank you, Michelle. And I know we've covered a lot of ground in an hour, but I appreciate our panelists, Kelly, Jeremy, Jose, and Michelle for covering the topics today. And again, I want to thank, Dave Williams and Chris Nichols and Kim Kaufman and Rebecca Lilly for, putting this on. Rebecca, do we have time to take maybe just a couple of questions? Let me see what we have here that's come in.
That's fine.
Okay. One question is, how does SMR compare to other flexible generation, IS, RES, for example, RES methane in a 75% VRE scenario? Does anybody on the panel want to try to answer that?
So Jose here. So we've designed our plant with the 3 different modes of load following capability. So for the rapid response, we can use a turbine bypass of steam directly to the condenser. So you can vary your power anywhere from 20% to 100%. And that would be for the seconds to the 1 hour time frame. From the 1 hour to multiple days, we can go to a control rod power. So we have a very maneuverable system because the core is relatively small. So that's the second mode. And then the long-term mode would be what we call a load shaping, which means that we can actually shut down 1 or 2 modules if you're complementing other types of technologies like hydropower for a season.
Okay, Jose, while you're there, we've got a great question from my good friend, Dr. Martha Jordan, about your papers. Are your papers and studies you discussed readily available, or are they considered proprietary? And if somebody does want to get them, because I'm interested in them as well, how do we?
Sure, yeah. If you go to NuScale Power, our website, they'll be under the technology section. You'll see a list of papers which are available. And most of those have been either published in journals, so we may reference you to a journal, but most of those are available. That includes hydrogen production, desalination, oil refinery work, and electromagnetic pulse as examples.
And Kelly, we have a quick question for you, although I'm not sure this is a Department of Energy issue, but the question is from Brad Landry. Is there an atom of hope to reinstate Indian Point 2 and 3?
Yes, I actually had started typing an answer, but can answer it live. So just a brief bit of context for other folks on the line. Indian Point provides, it's a power plant in downstate New York, and it provides Manhattan with about 25% of its power. Indian Point 2 ceased commercial operation on April 30th of this year. And unfortunately, when that happens, the license type and requirements change, and there is no process to bring a reactor back into commercial operation. So for Indian Point 2, the answer is unfortunately no. Indian Point 3, in theory, its closure could be prevented. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, I think that's unlikely. Kind of an unsatisfying answer, but
It's okay. Hey, and one final question is for Michelle. Roughly what % of TVA's customers want clean power, and are they willing to pay more for it? And I'm going to add, just a little point on that is, have you done surveys of your customers relative to clean power?
Yeah, so I don't have those numbers with me at this time, but I will say that absolutely the customers care about having clean power. And part of our mission, though, is to supply low-cost power. And there's lots of options out there that provide low-cost power that is clean. And nuclear has its obstacles that it has to overcome. What we're working on this time in our group is to find a way to make nuclear more economical and make it competitive with other forms of clean energy. And so we are hopeful, and I believe that there is a success path to do that. So while our customers do care, we want to do that in a low-cost manner. So that's what we're pursuing at TVA.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you again to our panelists. And also thanks for the participants who tuned in and watched today and asked questions. And with that, I believe I will turn it back over to Rebecca.
USAEE wishes to thank Dr. Eric Knox and our distinguished panelists for an outstanding webinar. This webinar will be available on USAEE's website for future download. If you are not a member of USAEE, we encourage you to join by visiting www.usaee.org. We thank you for attending, and I now officially close this webinar.